Alright, this video is over chemical and physical properties. This is an important chapter because throughout the year you're going to be told certain things about certain chemicals, and you're going to have to be asked if they are chemical or physical properties, and then you're going to be asked to interpret results based on those properties. So make sure you understand the difference between these two forms of properties. So let's focus on chemical properties first. What are chemical properties? They describe the ability of a substance to undergo changes. And here's the key thing: changes that transform it into different substances. So you're starting with one thing, and all of a sudden it becomes something else. That's how you know it's a chemical property. And then a good little key, a good little hint: a chemical reaction must be performed in order for it to be a chemical property. So here are a few examples of chemical properties. You can see each of these involves some kind of reaction. An explosion is always a chemical property. Anything that's set on fire is going to be a chemical property. And then if it reacts, if you see the word react, you know it's a chemical property. Now, physical properties, on the other hand, don't change the substance you're working with. It's a descriptive term. It does not alter the chemical identity of the substance. Now, you have extensive and intensive properties. So let's go ahead and look at extensive properties. They are dependent on the amount of substance you have. In other words, if you have 1 gram of something and then 100 grams of something, one of these properties is going to change because you have more or less of that substance. And the big thing about extensive properties is they cannot identify a substance. Intensive properties, on the other hand, do not depend on amount. They can be used to identify substance because if you have a little bit or a lot of whatever substance you're working with, they all work the same. The properties hold true throughout it. Using these definitions, go ahead and do your practice problems. And now that we've done chemical and physical properties, let's look at the difference between chemical changes and physical changes. Chemical changes, like we just talked about chemical properties, transform one or more substances to a new or different substance, and they involve some kind of reaction taking place. That's almost the exact same definition as the properties. So how do you know if it's a chemical change? Well, an unexpected change in heat energy. So if it becomes hotter, if it becomes colder, you know there's some kind of reaction taking place. It's an endothermic or exothermic reaction. If you get a gas being produced like you would if you mixed vinegar and baking soda, you see that gas being produced by bubbles, so you know a chemical reaction is taking place. You can have a color change. Solid precipitate is produced, or a cloudiness. Then you have a mass change. And then anything that makes new odor or anything that produces fire, that's the flammability, explosion stuff going on there. So any of these things that happens that are in red, that's how you know it's a chemical change. Physical changes, on the other hand, don't change the identity of the substance. So you see this little thing up here, that's ice being melted into water. That's changing from ice to water, but ice is still to water. So even though it's changing, it's not changing the identity of the substance. The cool thing with physical changes is that sometimes they can be changed back. Those are reversible. Sometimes those are really just phase changes. And a lot of times they can't be changed back. Go ahead and do your practice 3 problems based on your definitions that you just had. After you do this video. Okay, so you took your definitions and let's see how you did with these example problems. So chewing. We're going to call that a physical change because if you take a sandwich and you chew a sandwich in your mouth, it's still a sandwich. Not really any reactions taking place just with chewing. Now in your stomach you have breakdown of proteins into amino acids. That's changing it from proteins to amino acids. So starting at one thing, becoming another thing, so that's going to be a chemical change. Now breaking down of carbs, it's starting out as a carbohydrate, ending up as sugars. That's going to be a chemical change. It started out as one thing, changed to another. Stomach churning, just because your stomach's mixing those two things together doesn't mean a chemical reaction is taking place. So we're calling that physical. Starch breakdown, anytime you see a breakdown or conversion, it's going to be a chemical. Breaking up from starch to sugar. This is actually the same as that. And then reaction with hydrochloric acid. You see the reaction. If the reaction took place, you know it's a chemical change. That's all we got.